Another very busy week in the courts and the various Trump-related cases. We'll give an update on what's going on in the Washington, D.C. federal criminal case where the federal judge Tanya Chutkan green-lit a massive 180-page filing by special counsel Jack Smith over Donald Trump's objections. We know that there's going to be bombshell after bombshell in this filing that was made. The question becomes, what's going to be redacted? What is the public going to see? And what is the order of operations to even determine what gets filed or doesn't get filed? We will break that down. There was also a major oral argument before the appellate division in New York in the massive civil fraud judgment that was entered against Donald Trump a few months ago for his inflating of valuations at his various properties. I also want to talk about how this week showed yet again the Department of Justice is quite actually doing the exact opposite of what Donald Trump is accusing them of doing. Donald Trump keeps saying, oh, the Department of Justice is weaponized against me. If you look at all the various cases right now, I mean, the Department of Justice prosecuting Hunter Biden, prosecuting and convicting Senator Menendez in New Jersey. And this week, Eric Adams, the mayor in New York, got indicted in a massive case. Want to break that down, all of that and more here on Legal AF. Let's bring in Michael Popok. Michael Popok, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing fantastic. I'm so glad you're home and with your baby. I think you have a hospital wristlet on there. That just shows you the commitment that we have not only to Meises's family, but to our own personal families. I'm so happy to have you back. It's backbreaking to help contribute to the network when you're not around. I tried a Ben yesterday, and it's a lot, but I'm glad I'm here. We got so many amazing things to talk about at that intersection of law and politics. And so let's jump in with why everybody's here.
Michael Popok, trying a Ben is just doing what, a lot of videos? What's the trying the Ben?
That came out wrong? That was like, for those that follow along and support both of us, and I know there's so many that do, I sat down and did 14 videos between the Midas Touch Network and our new Legal AF MTN YouTube channel. And we broke 100,000 subscribers in 10 days. We're only 10 days old.
Pretty impressive stuff right there. Thank you, Michael Popok. Thank you to my brother Brett, who did an incredible job holding down the Midas Touch channel, and to all of our editors, producers. Thank you as well. Let's just show you what Donald Trump's been doing just this past week, because this is the intersection of law and politics. So I don't just want to talk about the past crimes. I want to look to the future to show you Donald Trump's ongoing conduct. And we could just kind of call it out and be descriptive of what's happening in the future as well, not just retrospective. So take a look right here. Here are certain speeches that Donald Trump gave this week, and we could just show you why he's involved in so many criminal cases. So here, Donald Trump giving a speech in Walker, Michigan, and then he gave a speech at Trump Tower as well earlier in the week. These are supposed to be campaign speeches, right? Where you tell the American people what you're going to do for them. Social Security. What are you going to do with healthcare? What are you going to do with the economy, infrastructure, jobs, things like that? And you should lay it out in a great deal of detail. When I show people the Vice President Kamala Harris speeches, we show you what her plans are. Tax cuts for small businesses, tax cuts for families, stuff like that. She went to the border. She rolled out a very comprehensive border plan that Donald Trump wants to kill and tried to kill and did kill before, because he thinks that chaos is a winning issue for him under the authoritarian playbook. But here's what Donald Trump's talking about. Here's Trump on Pelosi in Walker, Michigan. Let's play this one first.
By the way, did you see yesterday, 2 days ago? So I'm not much into this stuff, but Visa crashed because the government went after. The government filed a big suit against Visa. Nancy and her husband sold their stock the day before it was announced. Nancy Pelosi. So why don't we get some AG somewhere like in a Republican territory? And why don't we get them to do a little investigation?
And then over here, he says that Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for January 6th. Play this clip.
And Nancy Pelosi has a little problem because her husband sold their Visa stock. They had a lot of Visa stock one day before Visa was announced that Visa is being sued by the Department of Justice. Think of that. Nancy Pelosi sold vast amounts of Visa stock one day before the big lawsuit that we all read about a few days ago was brought against Visa. You think it was luck? I don't think. She should be prosecuted. Nancy Pelosi should be prosecuted for that. And she should also be prosecuted for J6 because she turned down 10,000 or any number she wanted, soldiers or National Guard. And I hope you all read John Solomon and what John Solomon wrote 2 days ago.
And just think about that there. You have the leader of a major political party, one, spreading lies, but two, saying that he wants to have attorney generals or anyone that he can exercise control and authority over weaponized against his political enemies. There's a point there, though, where he talks about that she should be prosecuted for January 6th, which to me is a self-own and frankly what we would like to call an admission against self-interest that certainly would come in a criminal case. And by the way, it's a statement of a party opponent. He's a criminal defendant. So statements like that will come in the criminal prosecutions of Donald Trump by special counsel Jack Smith that we'll talk about in a moment as well. But finally, as part of this trifecta that I want to show you, Michael Popok, I want to show you what Donald Trump was also doing this week, where he was selling $100,000 watches. He put together an infomercial. Like you remember, I remember growing up, it wasn't all that long ago, where they would have like whatever it was, like the 5-minute abs or like Sham Wow or Sham Woo or whatever it would be. And Mike Lindell, made his money. That's why Donald Trump likes the guy so much too. Selling the pillows for $9.99. I'm going to get you this. I'm going to get you this. Trump's taken that to a whole new level. The leader of the Republican Party, Donald Trump, we've covered this before. Right after Butler, Pennsylvania, what did he do? He sold assassination edition sneakers with his image on it that says fight, fight, fight. These are assassination edition sneakers. He sells the coins. He sells the NFTs. Now he's selling a $100,000 watch. And I also want to reflect from a legal perspective why this is significant as well. But here's the infomercial. He goes, you got to go to TrumpWatches.com, $100,000. You're not going to want to miss this. Here, play this clip.
Special. I think you're going to love it. My new Trump watches. We're doing quite a number with watches, and the quality to me is very important. The Trump Victory Tourbillon. This isn't just any watch. It's one of the best watches made. It's a tourbillon watch with almost 200 grams of gold and more than 100 real diamonds. That's a lot of diamonds. I love gold. I love diamonds. We all do. Only 147 of these extraordinary watches will ever exist in the world, and owning one puts you in a very exclusive club. I have watch number one, and I'm going to keep it. It's mine, and that's the way I want to have it. Each watch is numbered and extremely rare, a true collector's item, and it includes a personal letter signed by me. Get your Trump watch right now. Go to gettrumpwatches.com. It's Trump time.
It says you'll be a part of a very exclusive club. That's notable. Then when you go to the frequently asked questions section of the website, the question is, will I be getting the exact watch that I see on the website? Answer, the images shown are for illustration purposes only and may not be the exact representation of the product. In other words, what you're being shown is not the watch that you may receive. They may just send you anything. Another question is about the shipping dates. When will they arrive? Shipping and delivery dates are estimates only and cannot be guaranteed. We're not liable for any delays in shipments. They may come in October, November, or December, but they're estimates and they can send to you whenever. Can I buy my items with credit card or crypto? Yes, buy the Fight, Fight, Fight watches with credit card or Bitcoin, so you can buy it in ways that are hard to trace. And as I said, Michael Popok, dig deeper into these $100,000 Trump watches and think about it. You can buy with Bitcoin, hard to trace. Foreigners and foreign entities can also buy this. That's one of the things that it says. The photos on the site are not actual watches. They're just illustrations of what one might look like. And there's no guarantee when or if a watch will ever even arrive. So just say it raises lots of red flags. Sorry for that long build up there with all of those videos, but I think it's so key right now that we start thinking about 2025 and 2026 and the various schemes that are emerging and percolating now, as well as the evidence that Donald Trump's continuing to create against himself now. Popok, break that all down for us, sir.
Yeah, okay. That's called a hospital pass. That's where you throw it over the middle to the receiver and it gets clobbered. All right, I think I can do it, though. Let's start with the watches and work backwards. I love the fact that in that video, maybe Brett, who's working with us today, can put it back up. There's a 1-point font at the bottom that has that disclaimer that you just talked about, that these are for representative purposes, illustrative purposes only, not representative of what you may actually get. You're already at late night TV when you see these kind of infomercials. He also has this weird affectation. Besides that sniffing, snorting thing that Donald Trump has developed in his old age, he now has this weird way of overemphasizing the wrong syllable or the wrong word. Diamonds. Who doesn't like diamonds? I mean, he's getting to be a characterization of, sorry about that. So you weren't ready for that, Popok. Diamonds. And who doesn't love gold and diamonds? They made him a mock. There it is. It's like a 1-point font at the bottom. And then even though they had in their disclaimer that you put up earlier, we may need additional information from other customers, i.e., we have things like Bank Secrecy Act, anti-money laundering requirements, and the Patriot Act that tries to stop, things like money laundering from happening, which is, of course, it's ripe for that when you're asking for Bitcoin. It's another way to skirt the federal election law and campaign contribution laws, while the Department of Justice, I'll call it what it is, the Biden Department of Justice is working overtime trying to keep foreign influence and foreign donations out of our election system because they are illegal. What keeps Merrick Garland in the Department of Justice up at night is, and Merrick Garland looks like he hasn't slept, is the October surprise being Russia, Iran, India, even some of our frenemies trying to influence the outcome of the election. And here you got a vulnerable, a compromised candidate in Donald Trump, financially compromised because of his failures in the business community and the judgment of $500 million, whatever that's going to end up being, we'll talk about later. He's compromised because of his own narcissism and his own ego. Flattery will get a dictator anywhere with Donald Trump. He's compromised because even his own former deputy FBI director said it recently that he believes he's a turned asset for Russia. I mean, this is remarkable things that you and I need to talk about on a Legal AF podcast about a presidential candidate and former president that the intelligence community believes is a Russian asset. And here he's opened the door. You want to influence me? you want to put money in my pocket, in the pocket of my family's? Here's an opportunity. Buy $100,000 gold Turbullion watch or whatever the heck it is. Let's turn to Nancy Pelosi for a minute. There is no evidence. There's no evidence for anything he says out loud about Nancy Pelosi. There's no evidence at all that the reason that Paul Pelosi sold a couple of thousand shares of stock in his portfolio had anything more to do than just trying to rebalance his portfolio as he comes to the end of the year. He didn't sell out his entire position. He sold a portion of it. I don't know what percentage of it, but if you have any type of portfolio and you're coming towards the end of the year, you want to start taking profit or you want to start rebalancing and putting in different things. The Visa stock has done, frankly, I'll put my Wall Street hat on for a minute, has done well over the last 5 years. It's up 50, 60%. Over the last year, up 6 or 8%. And he hit it at a peak where it was up, not down. Now, Donald Trump doesn't understand up and down when it comes to stock prices because his stock price arrow only goes down. And goes down further after 8 million out of the 20 million shares out there with co-founders got sold a couple of days ago. The stock is still hovering at $14, but it's heading down past 10 and even 5, I think, based on the fact it is nothing more than a penny stock. It has it's a Potemkin village. There's absolutely nothing behind it. no economics, no nothing. And this is why I don't know why I don't even know why some of the polls, like the Times poll, is even as close as they are. I don't know why Donald Trump is just completely in the trash with supporters, because when I've never seen in my life, I can't determine if I were just looking at it like I was like you have that Alien show. If I just came down from Mars and you just showed that Martian the Twitter or social media feed for Donald Trump, the official of social, not a parody account, and you said, "Tell me what this person is trying to do for a living," and you just saw gold coins silver coins being sold, gold watches being sold, sneakers being sold, a couple of attacks about Kamala down at the border, dogs and cats being protected by memes, and then back to the cryptocurrency, and now we're back to what you'd be like, I don't know, he's a late night snake oil salesman. Like, no, he is the candidate for one of the two major parties for the presidency. And this is less than 40 days before the presidency, where every bit of his effort should be in trying to win the campaign in some way. And instead, he's just trying to make his family and him financially better off than they were 4 years ago, to use his own slogan, by setting them up. You got Jared Kushner, which I've done a hot take on, who's got a $3 billion fund that's returned no profits to the Saudi government or to anything else in the Arab world. Yet he's earned hundreds of millions of dollars of fees for the Trump family. Another way that foreign influence is trying to curry favor with Donald Trump. As to the last lie that you raised about Nancy Pelosi, the lie that he continues to perpetuate because corporate media doesn't hold his feet to the fire on this, and they don't, whenever they get him in a question and answer, which is rare, they think Kamala Harris isn't sitting for enough interviews. Donald Trump's sitting for no interviews except for these fake campaign stops with Newsmax or Fox News or some podcaster. That's it. He does not take questions, because the question that needs to be asked is, sir, isn't it a fact that your own Secretary of Defense, Chris Miller, testified to the Jan 6 committee under oath that you never gave an order whatsoever to bring out any National Guardsmen during Jan 6? You had a discussion about it in your waning days of your administration, but you never gave an order, not for 20,000, not for 10,000 National Guardsmen, not for 0 National Guardsmen. And this is the part you said about, which I liked, I wrote it down, about all of the investigations that haven't yet gone to trial, all the prosecutions that have not yet gone to trial are active, live prosecutions, meaning Donald Trump continues to make new evidence every day against himself in the cases that are being prosecuted by the special counsel and other prosecutors around America. Until they go through trial and there's a verdict, it's an ongoing investigation. And I am sure, it may even rival Midas Touch's newsroom run by Ron. I am sure there is a group of 100 or 200 young professionals that are attached to the Department of Justice, that all they do all day is plug in the social media feed, the rallies, the speeches, the X tweets, social media posts of Donald Trump, to scrape them for use as evidence against him in his trials. For instance, when he said finally admitted out loud that what happened at Jan 6th wasn't a Capitol tour gone awry. It wasn't led by loving patriots that are now political prisoners or hostages. It was a crime. It was a crime scene, what happened at Jan 6th and the attack on the Capitol, the siege on the Capitol. He just wants to blame Nancy Pelosi for it. But he's already admitted mental state. He's already admitted that it's a crime when he says she should go to jail for what happened. I thought Jan 6th was just a walk in the park, Don. I didn't realize it was a crime scene. Now he reminds me, I did this on a hot take, Ben. He reminds me of O.J. Simpson, the late O.J. Simpson, who used to regularly go on podcasts and news interviews, and he would say he'll put up $100,000 reward for the killer of Nicole Brown Simpson. I always wanted to phone in and say, I've got it, OJ, it was you. So for Donald Trump to say, it was Nancy, the only thing that Nancy Pelosi ever did, and it's been taken completely out of context, is like an adult. She in a documentary that her daughter prepared said that after the attack happened, in retrospect, she should have, working with the Sergeant of Arms of Congress, should have been better prepared for the siege on the Capitol. But to blame her and to argue that she's the criminal is the equivalent of a family who has their house set on fire by an arsonist being charged with a crime because they didn't do enough to get out of the burning house, and the arsonist goes free. Donald Trump's the arsonist. And the quicker this justice system, and we'll talk a lot about a major development, almost startling, in the DC election interference case. The sooner that happens, the better. And so, I don't know, did I cover it all?
You covered it all. There was a lot there. You mentioned one thing, though, and you said, look, in the polling earlier today and end of last week has been very favorable to Vice President Kamala Harris, but it's close. And there are so many people who go, how is this even close? And lots of the people who say that are consumers of accurate data and information, like on the Midas Touch network. But I'll tell you, having spent 5 days in a hospital room with my wife and newborn, and by the way, they're both doing great and such an incredible joy. I can't even express it in words, but we had the TV on, and I watched a full day of news on ABC, a full day of news on NBC, which would just play throughout the day. It was maddening the way they present Donald Trump, and they not only sane wash, they do the PR for him. It's unbelievable. They show very little Vice President Kamala Harris, if at all. And then they present these images of Donald Trump like it's totally normal. They'll take just literally, like quite literally 5 seconds of his speech where he'll say things like, and that's why we need a strong border. And they'll edit out the fact that before that, he'll say, like Hannibal Lecter once said, or something like that. And I'm like, you are just completely sane washing this. And then they'll just both sides the thing. And so if you're, working 2 jobs or working all day and taking care of a family, and you're not a consumer of a lot of news because you're very busy, you turn on your news stations, which a lot of local news is either owned by Fox, Murdoch Properties, Sinclair, or whoever. You're getting right tilted news to begin with. Then you turn on corporate media at night, you're not really getting accurate news. And then lots of people watch Fox. So there's really not accurate information getting out there, which is the project we're all engaging on here in Midas Touch Network and in building this digital media network to just get out the truth and the facts to people. We're coming with more receipts here on the Midas Touch Network. I want to give a hat tip to you, though, Michael Popok, on the launch of the Legal AF YouTube channel. As you mentioned at the outset, clearing 100,000 subscribers already. Now let's get you to 1 million. Make sure you all subscribe to the Legal AF YouTube channel. It is free to subscribe, and also support the growth of independent media right here by going to patreon.com/legalaf. We'll be right back after our first break of the show.
Support for today's episode comes from OneSkin. Did you know that your body starts accumulating senescent cells as early as your 20s? They're also called zombie cells, and these cells stop producing collagen and hyaluronic acid like they used to, and they start secreting an inflammatory substance that makes neighboring cells dysfunctional too. There is an answer for these zombie cells, though, and it comes from our sponsor, OneSkin. So this was a company founded by all women scientists, and OneSkin is the first and only skin longevity company to target cellular senescence cells with their proprietary OS1 peptide. So it's scientifically proven to decrease lines and wrinkles, boost hydration, and help with the thinning skin that often comes with age. Don't just take my word for it. They've got over 4,000 5-star reviews for their full line of face, body, sun, and travel size products. And my mother notices, and she's the one who always tells the truth, as mothers often do, and says, wow, look at your skin. You look so much younger. So for a limited time, you can try OneSkin for 15% off using the code LEGALAF when you check out at oneskin.co. So there's no M at the end. Your skin can stay healthy, strong, hydrated at every age, and you can treat the root cause rather than the symptoms of aging and look younger too. which, because I'm on TV all the time, I want to look younger. So go to oneskin.co and put in Legal AF. Thanks, OneSkin, for sponsoring this episode.
The law firm, my Legal AF podcasting and hot take work, and a new baby to raise with my wife. I've hit the apex of my stress level, leading me to feel drained at times and run down. But I would never use any type of stimulant that would interfere with my heart-healthy routine. Super Beets Heart Chews offer a convenient, delicious plant-based way to support healthy blood pressure and circulation. Enjoy a heart-healthy boost without the jitters. Paired with a healthy lifestyle, the unique antioxidant compound in Super Beets is clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. I love Super Beets Heart Chews because it has boosted my energy level and made me feel like I am focused on a heart-healthy lifestyle, so I don't let those important to me, including my audience, down. And it's so simple. I just put the individually wrapped heart chews in my little sandwich bag along with my other vitamins and take them as soon as I step into my daily commute. It's the only heart chew I've ever used, and that says it all. Support healthy circulation from a plant-based chew without stimulants and no artificial sweeteners or colors. In fact, more doctors, pharmacists, and cardiologists recommend Super Beets for heart health support than any other beet brand. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews on all bundles and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using code LEGALAF. That's getsuperbeets.com. Code LEGALAF.
Great ad reads there, Michael Popok, and great to see Karen Friedman-Agnifilo as well. You know, oftentimes legal shows focus on the ultimate drama, which is the trial itself, or maybe the filing of the complaint, but often it's just to focus on the trial. What I love about this program is that from the complaint being filed or in a criminal case, an indictment being unsealed, through the discovery process, through all of the motions, through the stuff that goes on behind the scenes about how long can the motions even be? Can the motions be 180 pages, 1,000,000 pages, 5 pages? What are the rules surrounding how a motion even gets filed? What's the content of the motion itself? Do motions just stand alone, or are there oppositions filed by a party? Then do you get to reply to the opposition? How is that structured? Who sets the schedule? Right? To me, all of that's important. So we don't just wake up one day and go, oh, guilty or not guilty or this. We follow the process every step of the way so we understand. It'd be like watching football and not actually understanding like how the rules are. Can you throw the ball? Can you kick the ball? Can you run out of bounds? So that's why it's so important that we cover that here. So we're going to talk about in the Washington, D.C. Federal criminal case against Donald Trump for his efforts to overthrow the free and fair election. As you all know, the reason why that case has been delayed, despite the indictment being filed originally or unsealed in August of 2023, was the Supreme Court said that, Donald Trump was entitled to absolute immunity, immunity for core constitutional functions, official acts, and broad presumptions that the conduct of what you do while in the office of the presidency is an official act. And also the Supreme Court gave an evidentiary immunity that core constitutional functions and official acts really can't even be introduced in evidence. There's also what's called dicta, which is not the core finding in a Supreme Court ruling, but the right-wing justices in making that ruling in favor of Donald Trump and in favor of kings and monarchs and authoritarians more broadly, also put in this bizarre language as well about the reason that they think that you should have king-like immunity is that someone who holds the office of presidency should not be have their names tarnished. I think the word they use is what, Popok? Opprobrium. probrium, and that you shouldn't face kind of these like even negative consequences at all. So Donald Trump latched on to that language. And one of the things Trump's been arguing this past week, or really since the ruling, is that the immunity is even further than what the Supreme Court said. Not only should I be immune from core constitutional functions and official acts, but you can't say anything negative about me. And there shouldn't be filings that have mean, and I'm not making this up, folks. This is actually Trump's argument this week, that if Jack Smith puts mean things in a filing about me, that runs afoul to the Supreme Court. I have immunity from meanie heads. Like that's basically the argument in layman's terms. So there was this whole argument today, this week rather, about what special counsel Jack Smith could even file at this stage, because now, post-Supreme Court ruling on absolute immunity, what has to be argued is whether or not the conduct in the superseding indictment, which is the new indictment since the Supreme Court issued that ruling that was brought about a month ago or so, the superseding indictment was unsealed, whether that is subject to what the Supreme Court said, absolute immunity, or does it fall outside of it because it's not official acts? Trump's arguing you can't even file things against me because you're being mean. And the Supreme Court said, you can't be mean to me, Jack Smith. So that's kind of where we're at. I want to throw it to Popok, but I do want to show this before digging deeper into the Washington, D.C. updates, which is you referenced what Chris Miller said, Donald Trump's acting defense secretary. Everybody in the Trump administration was like an acting defense secretary or acting this or act, because Trump never actually went through the legal process of getting anybody confirmed. And we don't talk enough about that as well, that these are non-confirmed people. So, for example, Donald Trump's Homeland Security director was non-confirmed.
Ken Cuccinelli, yeah.
It was Ken Cuccinelli, but it was Cuccinelli reported. He was the deputy, but he reported to the other guy. I'll get the guy's name in a second, who's a federal judge said, you're acting, so none of what you did was actually authorized by law anyway. But anyway, here's the former acting defense secretary, Chris Miller, right here. His under oath testimony to January 6th committee. This guy would go on Hannity and Fox and say the opposite. He would lie. So when Donald Trump is saying, I ordered 10,000 National Guard troops, Trump would then have Chris Miller go on Hannity and lie to the Fox audience. But then when the guy was under oath, here's what he said to the January 6th committee. This is what Trump's own acting defense secretary said. Let's play it.
I want to be clear here that since then, in February of 2021, Mark Meadows said on Fox News that, quote, even in January, that was a given. As many as 10,000 National Guard troops were told to be on the ready by the Secretary of Defense. Is there any accuracy to that statement?
I'm not from my perspective. I was never given any direction or order or knew of any plans of that nature. So I was surprised by seeing that publicly, but I don't know the context or even where it was. So, no, there was no, we obviously had plans for activating more folks, but that was not anything more than contingency planning. There was no official message traffic or anything of that nature regarding.
So just so we're clear, you did not have 10,000 troops, quote, to be on the ready for January 6th, prior to January 6th.
A non-military person probably could have some sort of weird interpretation, but no, to answer your question, no, that was not part of my plan or the Department of Defense's plan.
And just that the rest of his statement was, quote, that was a direct order from President Trump, and yet here is what we see, all kinds of blame going around, but not a whole lot of accountability. And to be crystal clear, there was no direct order from President Trump to put 10,000 troops to be on the ready for January 6th, correct?
No. That's correct. There was no order from the president.
See, Michael Popok, what we just did there was just show the facts. And if you watch your corporate media at night, their entire segment will only be 30 seconds. and they'll have Trump saying his piece. Then they'll have, perhaps the other side, maybe, or maybe just Donald Trump saying his piece. And they just move on to talk about other stuff. And it's like, just give me that information. That's Donald Trump's guy. We know Trump's lying because Trump's guy says he's lying under oath. That's the guy who would know. There's no other guy who would know. That's the person. Oh, and the Homeland Security Secretary, Chad Wolf. That's what I was thinking.
Mm-hmm. Cuccinelli had his own problems too, including, as you said, being told by a federal judge you had no power here. And one of the reasons that there were so many actings is because Donald Trump kept firing people like Mark Esper, who was the Secretary of Defense in the waning days of his administration. He was going through attorney generals like he was going through his underwear in the last remaining days until he finally landed on one who would do his bidding in Jeff Clark. And that's why they're also another reason why there were so many actings. Here is the truth, as you just laid out. Donald Trump did not give a command to reinforce the protection of the Capitol at any time before Jan 6th, and he was derelict in his duties as he sat in the dining room, despite numerous aides, including Dan Scavino and other people coming to him and imploring him to do something. He instead thought everything that was going on at the Capitol was a natural, appropriate reaction for people who had the feeling that the election had been stolen, the way he had that feeling. And what Donald Trump has to worry about, so there's no order. There's no order at all. And there's plenty of testimony that as the commander-in-chief, to cut through the traffic and the analysis paralysis that was going on at the Pentagon when they were running around. This sounds a scary concept, but they were running around like a chicken with their heads cut off with no leadership at that moment. So bad that Nancy Pelosi, hiding under her desk, and we've seen the video, hiding under her desk with Chuck Schumer, called into the Virginia governor controlling his own National Guard to as a cry for help. That's how bad it was. Okay, as they were belly crawling and otherwise trying to get their way out of the Capitol. Now, this all goes to my new evidence every day being generated by Donald Trump against his own case. So you have that going for you. Let me segue into what you touched on with the DC. What's going on in D.C. with Judge Chutkan. I think people want to hear about that because there was some startling developments there. We had always been focused, and so was Donald Trump, on this 180-page, an extra 140 pages between friends that Judge Chutkan gave to Jack Smith to file an oversized brief. Like, okay, I got to tell you, I've been doing this for over 30 years. I don't think there's been a complicated matter that I've handled in federal or state court where I haven't asked for more pages. It's assumed that it'll be 45 and 45 and a certain amount for reply briefs in the three briefs in a briefing schedule. But that the judge can always change her mind and if there's good cause shown, increase the amount of pages. And to answer the question that you raised before for our audience, what about other things that you file along with the brief? Is there a page limit there? And the answer is no. And that's the part that should be keeping and will be keeping Donald Trump literally and his lawyers up at night because they have a very limited amount of time to review this. It's the appendix. The appendix is a compendium. It is a series of documents, exhibits, if you will, like trial exhibits, but submitted now, that includes, according to the new filing by Jack Smith, witness statements, secret grand jury information, statements they've taken from cooperating witnesses, some of which we know, some of which we don't know, text messages from Mark Meadows, the Twitter account that they got by a subpoena over Elon Musk's dead body and objections in federal court. All of that is now, Jack Smith rightly believes he has to now present the context around the facts in his superseding indictment. Now, let's back up. The original indictment was before the immunity decision. The superseding indictment was with the benefit of having seen the immunity decision. Jack Smith went back to an ongoing grand jury and got a new indictment. That's why you and I and Karen and everyone on Legal AF talk about a superseding indictment, a second indictment, another grand jury having indicted Donald Trump. But this time, Jack Smith had the benefit of the immunity decision he didn't have before. So he was very careful to make sure that the facts, the operative facts, the overt acts of the crime, the elements of the crime coming out of that grand jury were going to comply with what the Supreme Court was looking for in the hard work now that Judge Chuckin's been tasked with in remand in the send back of the Supreme Court back to the district court back to this district court judge. And they've told her, you got to sort it all out. And you got to, because normally when you look at an indictment, to be fair, I just did I covered for you with Harry Littman. We did a Harry Littman hot take and we talked about this. Normally the indictment, if somebody moves to dismiss it, it's the defendant. And so you have to stay within the four corners of the indictment. You don't get to go out. The prosecutor doesn't go out to, oh yeah, there's a missing element in there, a missing act. But the grand jury, there's a great piece of evidence, Judge. Let me just bring it in. Like, you don't get to do that because the indictment has to rise and fall on its own merits. But here, this is an entirely different process because the Supreme Court has created an entirely new process and really demanded that Jack Smith do this because they've said, take your indictment and your facts, but give us the context, meaning the evidence around it, so that the judge can figure out whether this falls into the category of absolutely immune constitutional core presidential functions that are listed in the Constitution or official conduct. And here's where the rubber meets the road. Official conduct, like the job description for the president, stretched to its outer boundaries, is given a lower level of immunity protection by the Supreme Court than absolute. It's given rebuttable presumption of immunity, meaning the government can, on its own burden, with enough evidence, overcome the presumption and make those prosecutable acts and crimes. That means he has the burden. The burden's coming up now, not at trial. It's coming up in the briefing, in the appendix, which will be thousands of pages. As I said on a hot take recently, that's sort of the loophole. I've used it. You get 180 or 50 or 70 for your brief, but you get an unlimited number for the thing that's the companion, the sidecar, if you will, for the brief. And that's what they've done. But they had to do it because of the way that the Supreme Court commanded them to do it. Put on your evidence, put up or shut up now to overcome the presumption. Otherwise, you're left with very little of private prosecutable crime conduct in the third category. So that's why they're not doing it to embarrass or to heap scorn or approbation on Donald Trump. They're doing it to cover and carry their burden that has been established since July 1st of this year in that earth-shattering pro-Trump ruling by John Roberts and the Supreme Court. That's all they're doing. Now, to your point, you said something very, very right on it again earlier. You said they're trying to even expand the tremendous win they got and the gift they got by the United States Supreme Court in immunity. They are. And remember, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. Buried within one of the several papers that Donald Trump and his lawyers have filed recently, it's always the wrong paper. It's not the one that Judge Chutkin wants. It's always like, it just should be immediately dismissed, the indictment. You shouldn't have to look at anything. Just promptly dismiss it now. You don't listen to that guy over there, the special counsel. He's not even legitimate. We'll get to that later. The briefing schedule is all fakakta. That's a legal term. Don't let them file a thing, and especially not an appendix. And the judge is like, that's not the purpose of this motion or this piece of paper. Stop talking about reconsidering my position about the logistics and the process I'm going to use to follow the edict of the Supreme Court and get on with it, man. And so he said in there that in his view, this is his lawyers, that everything should be absolutely immune, going further than even the MAGA right wing of the Supreme Court went. Everything. There's the only way to implement, I'm paraphrasing, the only way to implement the ruling of the Supreme Court is to find everything in the superseding indictment ultimately absolute immune. In other words, you don't go over, there's no burden to worry about. So they don't have to put on any evidence because they don't have a burden because everything's absolute. Shove it all over into absolute immunity. That's not what the Supreme Court ruling says, and that's not the requirement. But they have been, as Lawrence O'Donnell said the other night on Last Word, Donald Trump is scared about this filing, and he should be. Now the judge there's two things that happened. We got the filing, but it's under seal because of prior protective orders in the case. And now there's a process supervised by the judge of what is going to end up on the public docket for you, me, Karen, and the public to see, and what is going to be under black tape or blackout. We call it redaction. And the reason for that is, and the number one thing that seems to be on the mind of Jack Smith is witness protection. and to stop Donald Trump from intimidating and going after with violent rhetoric witnesses and cooperating witnesses. And I'll give an example. And that, because that is about half of what Jack Smith filed yesterday when he said, we need to redact the names of all of the witnesses, except for guys like Mike Pence, because they're cooperators and we're worried about witness intimidation. He raised that argument in Mar-a-Lago with Judge Cannon. He raised it in other places. And he's got a receptive audience in Judge Chutkan, who's already gagged Donald Trump about certain of these things. And that gag order has been affirmed on appeal to the next level of appellate court. So that is the number one thing he's worried about. And so he wants to redact the names. Donald Trump, of course, two things. He doesn't want any of this filed. And so we could see, and I talked about this with you, Ben, and with Harry yesterday, we could see an attempted appeal to run it up to the D.C. Court of Appeals and then to the Supreme Court and talk about process and say to the D.C. Court of Appeals on Trump's behalf, what are we even doing here? Look what she's doing, Judge Chutkan. She's doing a whole evidence mini trial against me in the public domain, and that's not what she's supposed to be doing. Somebody tell her that that's not what she's supposed to be doing, and don't let that appendix, oh my God, don't let that get out into the public domain. We might see that. I think he gets slapped back pretty quickly because, decisions about process and redaction and all of that is not something I think the Supreme Court is going to find. Even 4 or 5 of them are going to find that interesting at this moment because they gave her the instructions and they don't give. I mean, I've seen Supreme Court occasionally clarify their remand instructions, but Donald Trump to delay we may try that process again. Finally, the fight is over the names. So on October the 1st, which is not that far away, it's off this show, and the day of the vice presidential debate, Donald Trump and his lawyers have to tell the judge what their proposed blackout is on the brief, the 180 pages. That's only like 4 or 5 days away, and you got to line by line this thing. Now, the reason we're talking about redaction is because the public in our system of criminal justice has a seat at the table. We don't do, as you said earlier in this, we don't do secret trials. We don't do star chambers. We don't take people out in the back and give them fake trials and then shoot them. That's for other dictators in other parts of the world, unfortunately. So the public has a right to know. The media, the First Amendment freedom of press, has a right to know about what is happening at every stage in a case. But there's also a balancing act, because we have to make sure that at the same time, the defendant is not heaped with scorn, that his being presumed to be not guilty, presumed to be innocent, is preserved, and that his ability to pick a fair and impartial jury in the future, so their minds aren't blown by all this evidence in advance, is also preserved. At the same time, the government is worried about witnesses. So that's where the judge comes in. So she's saying to Trump, October 1, tell me how you would redact this to balance all of these competing interests. Then she gave him, this is how we know the appendix is gigantic. Then she said, you're going to need more time with the appendix. Because for our audience, the judge and the parties always see the clean copy without redactions. So it's not like Donald Trump doesn't know, like, oh, wonder what's underneath that black tape. He knows. The lawyers know. They can do their defense. It's for the public. We're only talking about public filing here. The judge says, you need more time with that appendix. You take till the 10th of October. So 10 days to go through during his campaign, selling his watches, selling his crypto, right? There's the timetable, 10-10. And then she will take all of that. And by the way, I also think she's effing with Donald Trump. Leave that up for a minute. Donald Trump last week and his lawyers missed the deadline because they forgot that they didn't calendar that she had ordered 5 p.m. for something to be filed. And they didn't file by 5 p.m. And then they had to go and ask for an emergency application. For the 10-1 filing, she gave him till noon. But for the 10-10 filing, she gave him till 5. I think she's effing with him. She's like, see if you can keep track of this. In most cases, you get to file at midnight, unless the judge wants it a lot earlier. I have a case in Vegas where the magistrate judge wants everything by 5 p.m. Vegas time. I get it. But I did think that one's 12, one's 5. I mean, they can't keep 2 thoughts in their head straight. These 4 lawyers who are basically exhausted. So that will then sit with the judge starting on 10-10, and it's going to take a minute for her to get through it, because maybe even not at the time of up to the election. She always says she's colorblind, justice is blind, and she doesn't look at the election calendar. if that's true, she's going to do what she needs to do with her staff to compare these competing documents line for line and come up with a version that ends up on the public docket. Now, lastly, what ends up on the public docket, maybe before the election or right after the election, is not the final word. Because as the case continues and as they go through trial and things become less, you don't have to protect witnesses, things will get stripped off and we'll get new iterations and versions of this. And like a year from now, you and I will be talking with Karen about what we finally saw. Dan Scavino should be the one that keeps Donald Trump up at night as a cooperating witness, because we know from reporting what his statements were under oath to the prosecutors, to forget what he says on a social media. Like you said, that Chris Miller used to go on Fox and do the bidding of Donald Trump. To this day, Dan Scavino is still MAGA dyed in the wool. But what he told the Department of Justice, the special counsel, is chilling. That he went in on Jan 6 to try to get his boss, who he's known since he was a teenager. And this is the guy that was posting on X, ghostwriting for Donald Trump when Trump did all his mean tweets. Half of them were Scavino's or more. And he went in there and says, "This is your legacy. Look at the smoke coming out of the Capitol. You can fix this. Say something. Stop it." And it wasn't until 4:17 in the afternoon, after all of the death and mayhem and the bloody medieval battles had happened, that Donald Trump finally gave a video, and even that video said, you've stolen, the election's been stolen from you. I feel it, but go home now. You're loved." That was 4:17. In the meantime, he sent out a tweet that poured gasoline on the fire, and the testimony is, including from lawyers in the White House counsel's office, like Pat Cipollone, his testimony is they ran to Scavino and said, "What kind of text is that? That's not calming anybody to tell them that they're right, the election's been stolen and Mike Pence isn't doing his job." He said, "I didn't write it," meaning Donald Trump wrote it. So Scavino is going to be, we're going to be seeing and talking a lot about Dan Scavino, Mark Meadows, thousands of text messages and other testimony from secret grand jury witnesses when we finally get our hot little hands on that filing.
Michael Popok, want to read that one, the language that I was referring to and that you mentioned there, just so people know from the filing when I was saying that Donald Trump's lawyers are now arguing that the immunity extends to being mean to him in filings, that he thinks that you can't file negative things about him. Here's what his lawyer said. They dress it up in lawyerly, articulate language, but I'm just telling you what they mean by this. It says, "The path preferred by the special counsel's office would result in an independent violation of the presidential immunity doctrine by exacerbating, quote, the peculiar public opprobrium that attaches to criminal proceedings. A 180-page filing would be the embodiment of the type of improper extended proceeding that the Supreme Court forbid as, quote, an impediment to the effective functioning of government. The court may not adjudicate superfluous presidential immunity issues, including by allowing the office to file this monstrosity. If Trump can establish immunity at the outset, requires the dismissal." So all of those big words right there are saying, we think the Supreme Court says you can't be a meanie head and file documents that will make Donald Trump upset, because if you make him sad, he won't be able to do his job or go through his day. So don't file this monstrosity. That's what they're saying right there. And it's absolutely pathetic. Make sure you all are subscribed to Michael Popok's leadership under the new YouTube channel, Legal AF. Just an extension of the Midas Touch channel. We just know you want more Michael Popok. You want more law. You want some of our other great hosts. We're going to start having Karen go on that channel and Danya and the whole crew. There's just going to be a lot more legal analysis on issues that we can't always cover on the Midas Touch YouTube channel. Subscribe now. We'll be back after our last quick break.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. In the world of politics and law, it's easy to get caught up in the constant news cycle and forget about taking care of ourselves. But just like we never skip a breaking law and politics news story, we shouldn't skip on our mental health either. When my schedule is packed with analyzing new court rulings and political developments or diving into trial prep, It's crucial to make time for self-care. That's where therapy comes in. It's not just for major crises. It's a tool for everyone to become their best selves. I've found that regular therapy sessions help me process the intense world I operate within in a healthier way. It's given me strategies to manage stress and set boundaries, which is crucial in my line of work. If you're considering therapy, BetterHelp makes it incredibly convenient. It's entirely online, designed to fit into your busy schedule. You just fill out a questionnaire and get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you need to switch therapists, no problem. There's no additional charge. Never skip therapy day with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/legalaf today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/legalaf. Traditional bed sheets, they can harbor more bacteria than a toilet seat. It can lead to acne, allergies, and stuffy noses, and it's just gross. Miracle Made offers a whole line of self-cleaning, antibacterial bedding, such as sheets, pillowcases, and comforters that prevent up to 99.7% of bacteria growth and require up to 3 times less laundry. Using silver-infused fabrics inspired by NASA, Miracle Made sheets are thermoregulating and designed to keep you at the perfect temperature all night long, no matter the weather. So you get better sleep every night. Miracle sheets are luxuriously comfortable without the high price tag of other luxury brands and feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. Stop sleeping on bacteria. Bacteria can clog your pores, causing breakouts and acne. Sleep clean with Miracle. These sheets are infused with silver that prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresh 3 times longer than other sheets. No more gross odors. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use our promo, LegalAF at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/legalaf and use the code LegalAF to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/legalaf to treat yourself. Thank you, Miracle Made, for sponsoring this episode.
Such great ad reads there, Michael Popok.
Thank you.
Support those pro-democracy sponsors. The links to the discount codes are in the description below. It's one of the ways to help build this independent media network. Patreon.com/legalaf is a great way to build it. Another great way is, we just started a Midas Touch Substack as well, which is MidasPlus.com. That's pretty cool. And then, of course, we've got the new Popok YouTube channel, the Legal AF YouTube channel, which is just, as Michael Popok told me when Midas Touch started, and we had literally 3 followers, and one of them was my mom, the other was Popok. He said, "Ben, you're building a rocket ship in 2020," and I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Thanks."
Yes.
And Popok's been here with us from day one. We've been covering from day one the civil fraud case against Donald Trump, quite literally from before it was even a civil fraud case, when it was a civil investigation being performed by the AG. We covered all the investigatory steps that were being taken, the pre-filing depositions. Then, of course, we talked about the case, the trial. We went through it all. And now we're at the appeals. Donald Trump, if he loses, is going to have to pay a judgment in the range of $500 million. I mean, he's already lost with the post-judgment interest accruing every day. That's what he would face. There's a judgment entered against him. The appellate division heard oral arguments. And I think it was a mixed bag, to be fair. There was a lot of judges who thought the number may be too high. But Popok, you practice in New York. You know that appellate division well. People come here for the facts, the good, the bad, the ugly,
Yeah, happy to. Thank you. So I listened to the oral argument. I also talked to some people in advance, including former judges in and around New York about it to get kind of ready. We talked afterwards, and this is the takeaway. And you set it up just perfectly. It's the $456 million disgorgement order judgment by Judge Engoron, finding that Donald Trump, the Trump family, and the Trump organization, except for Ivanka, committed persistent fraud, as that term is used, under a unique New York statute. We call it Executive Law 63-12. Talk about granular, which is just a way for whoever is sitting in the Attorney General's office at the time and to have a robust superpower to police and be the watchdog of financial markets, the business community, and Wall Street, because New York is the financial powerhouse and capital of the world. And so you would think that the Attorney General of that state would have that kind of power. And that's sort of a trade-off, because the Attorney General in New York has very limited, almost no criminal prosecution power, unlike other Attorney Generals around the country. But she does have this. And this is the one that everybody has used, whoever's been Attorney General, Schneiderman, Spitzer, her, it's often a stepping stone to the governorship, the Attorney General position in New York. And so they have been the police watchdogs of it. And as a result, there doesn't need to be a victim necessarily. You can just do bad things and tilt the playing field in your favor. And even if the other person on the other side doesn't catch it or isn't technically hurt, like in a normal fraud case, you've still violated the law. It's sort of like, I'm thinking about this now in my Wall Street background, it's sort of like violating the Securities and Exchange Commission laws or the CFTC laws or the laws of FINRA, another regulator for Wall Street. And there doesn't have to be a victim on the other side. I mean, certain types of fraud do, but other just technical violations of the rules, because you tried to give yourself an advantage or you didn't play by the rules, gets you in trouble. Same thing here. They never quite wanted to understand that on the Trump side. So Engoron, after listening to dozens and dozens of witnesses and thousands and thousands of, his words, a mountain full of evidence in 6 weeks, with experts for Donald Trump and for the New York Attorney General's office, entered his order. It was around Christmas time. He took a break of about a month in January of last year. He issued his order, and he said that Donald Trump lied about his personal financial statement and inflated the value of his assets, used reverse engineering, working with Michael Cohen, our fellow podcaster and friend, and other people like Alan Weisselberg, who's gone to jail twice now, having worked for Donald Trump and lied about it. And then just said, I want to be a $4 billionaire today. Make that the number. And like, well, we can't do that, boss, because we don't have enough assets and they're not valued that high. Well, just use an eraser and a pencil and just increase the number. Okay. That's sort of the scheme. It wasn't that people think that Donald Trump's, I know he likes to stand in front of his audience like, I came up with this idea about a sinking electric boat and whether I should let it sink or I should be eaten by a shark. I talked to people from MIT. This wasn't that bright of a plan. I mean, anybody can come up with this. Just change the numbers. So the final result is what we call disgorgement, which is a fancy way of saying that the court orders you to disgorge or rip away profits and amounts of money that you earn that you should not have earned. We call them ill-gotten gains. You gained it in an illegal way. It should be coughed up. In this case, given to the people of the state of New York, because the New York Attorney General is on the other side. And so that disgorgement amount, he calculated it property by property, transaction by transaction, because Donald Trump lied to his counterparties. And that totaled $456 million. That is now running with interest at $100,000 a day. It's something a day. That's $3 million and more a month. Okay. So he'd like to stop that. That's why it's up to almost like $490 million right now. Now, the way that the appellate courts work in New York, the appellate division first department that sits in Manhattan handles all the first level appeals, criminal or civil. That's why the sentencing issue for Donald Trump and the other criminal case is going to also go to the same court, but just a different rotating panel of judges. 5 justices hear the cases. And I will tell you as a practitioner in New York for over 30 years that nobody gets a judgment of a dollar amount and rests easy until the automatic almost appeal happens, and you go through the meat grinder of the first department, and you hope that a lot of what you got awarded to you by a jury or a judge comes out the other side. They are notorious for taking their blue pen or red pen and striking off categories of damages. I will tell you that in 30 years, I've never been given more money by the panel. I've never been like, well, Mr. Popok, you should have got $5 million more for your client. Oh, that's nice. Thank you. Put that down. No, it's always, well, the judge calculated the interest wrong. The judge, this category of damages wasn't available. Or that, we lop it off 10%, 20%, 30%. So we were expecting a haircut. This same panel, led by Justice Renwick, who is he's like the chief judge of the First Department, and others, had already about 5 or 6 months ago given a break to Donald Trump and said, because he said, I can't come up with the $500 million, the bond. I'm having trouble. They said, put up $175 million. It's the same panel. Now, some people thought, oh shit, they're going to reduce the whole thing to 175. That's not quite how I read it, but that is a floor here of 175. Having listened to the oral argument, I was most troubled by a comment made by Justice Moulton, who could be the person that ends up writing the ultimate decision. Really smart, really methodical, quiet person, but the big brain, if you will, on that panel. And when he led with a question to continue the troubling theme to the Miss, I can't remember her last name here. I think it's Jay. It'll come to me in a minute. The advocate, the appellate advocate for the New York Attorney General. He started the question with, I am troubled by the size of the judgment. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat this. That's not a good start. Now, I've had plenty of appellate panels that have been fiery, and I've left there thinking, wow, do I still have my back pocket? Are they still there? And then I get home, a month later, the order comes out, wait, I won? Or vice versa. I was like, wow, I did great. They loved me. And then I get the order and it's like, nope, you lost. So it's hard sometimes to tell, but I don't like the fact that Moulton, because you got to get the 3 votes. It's a majority. So if it's Moulton, Renwick, and one other person, I'll tell you who it's not going to be. It's not going to be Friedman, because Justice Friedman is the person that kept siding with Trump over and over again. Every time an emergency application was filed and Friedman was sitting around, he was like, yep, I'll grant that. And then it would be reversed by the full panel. So he was already not only throwing softballs at Donald Trump's lawyers, he was blowing kisses. Here you go. What about that? Don't you think that? Yeah, I think that. So that he's going to be an outlier. Question is, can Renwick and Moulton pull one other vote over, Rosado or one of these other people, and preserve the judgment? Short answer, bottom line, I think the order does not get the decision, the judgment does not get tossed in its entirety. I think they come up with a number that is lower than 546 million and higher than 175. If I were a betting man, I'd say, I don't know, $200 or $300 million. Not nothing, not chump change, but the only thing that left me a little bit troubled is they were questioning the use of this same statute that I just described in this context. They kept saying, well, if it's sophisticated parties on both sides, haven't we gone too far with the use of 63-12 as the law? And to which the lawyers for the New York Attorney General was like, why should he get benefited? Because his fraud scheme was so successful and he stole so much money. Is that a new defense? It's just too big of a number for the appellate court to consider. It's just too big. It can't be what the statute intended. I mean, the statute is made in the 50s, but the actions are today. And just because he's a super criminal doesn't mean he should get a break. I mean, that was sort of her argument. So we're going to wait, and it's going to come relatively soon. I think this decision will come out before the election, before November 5th. Usually it's about a month, 6 weeks. It's a little complicated here. We could get it. We could be talking about this ruling in October. And the loser, whoever that is going to take an appeal to the top court in New York, which is the Court of Appeals. And even if there's a winner, like they affirm the judgment, but they cut it down to size, the Attorney General could say, no, that number's not right. The 500 was right. Let's go. And we could have cross appeals. Donald Trump could say, the whole thing should have been tossed, and she could be appealing and saying the number's not high enough. And then all those issues go to the Court of Appeals, which is the last stop on the train. No federal involvement, no Supreme Court involvement. That will be the last. And if the judgment in any form gets affirmed, 30 days later, he's got to pay it. Whatever the amount is, not the bonding company. The bonding company is only if he doesn't pay. And if he pays it, he pays it. If he doesn't pay it, she's going to start selling off his assets, starting, I hope, with Trump Tower. That's where I think that goes. So I think Ben has family duties. So I'm going to do a final wrap here very, very quickly about what we started in the topic. Sorry to make this a hot take, a Popok hot take, but here we go. So to give you some talking points around the dinner table about lawfare and the weaponization of the Department of Justice, just look at what has happened in the last 2 months or 3 months. Which totally blows apart Donald Trump's argument that the Department of Justice is weaponized. It's going after for election interference, me and MAGA and other people. They don't like us, and to make them stop. The meanie part that Ben, my partner, raised earlier. And just look at who they prosecuted recently. Starting with Hunter Biden, the son of the sitting president, not once but twice by a special counsel, leading to his pleading guilty to several counts related to tax fraud, meaning he'll probably be looking at a jail time of a year or two. Then you have the Menendez prosecution of a Democratic senator, longtime senator from my home state of New Jersey. This is not the first bribery scandal he's been involved with. He was exonerated by the first one. But when you have stacks of gold bars in your wife's walk-in closet, you may be going to jail. And that was over an Egyptian scandal about halal, like kosher certification in the Arab world, of all things. So that prosecution led to a guilty verdict. And then you had, on top of that, you have the Iranian indictment that just came out against Iranians trying to interfere with our election and hack Donald Trump's campaign headquarters, which they successfully did, obtaining the J.D. Vance dossier, the white paper. And after hearing about the white paper and seeing it, I don't know how Donald Trump actually picked the guy to be his vice president. He may be ruining the day that he did that as his campaign chances go heading for the toilet and circling the drain. So you have that, and now you have Mayor Adams, who is the mayor of arguably the fourth largest economy in the world in New York, who just got brought low in an indictment and an arrest just a day or so ago of the mayor of the city of New York for a bribery, foreign interference in election campaign violation case stretching back to when he was Brooklyn borough president starting in 2016, involving the Turkish government, the Israeli government, and the Chinese government and the South Korean government, where he's had his hand out, apparently, according to the indictment, for years, in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then in a quid pro quo would change policy, would approve or force the approval of buildings like the Turkish consulate that weren't ready for occupancy, and force the fire marshal to do it. I mean, a real quid pro quo. I mean, when I met, the moment of candor here, I did go to a fundraiser for Eric Adams when he was first running, and I did write a campaign check for him and shake his hand. So if there's a picture out there, and I looked at him and I said, look, former police captain, looks great, wearing Gucci loafers. This guy was created in a lab. He's perfect for New York and following de Blasio and COVID. Wrong. that didn't really work out well. But these are all examples of what? Weaponization of the Department of Justice. Weaponization would be none of these people I just outlined or entities would be prosecuted. And then you've got, of course, what keeps the Department of Justice's hair on fire, which is foreign interference with our election process, where our foreign enemies, Russia, China, Iran, looking at you, frenemies like India, you try to put the Americans at each other's throat through social media disinformation campaigns and AI, and get the vote for whoever you think is favorable to you. And that's why in another recent prosecution, you've got this Tennessee-based media, right-wing media company, sort of the Midas touch of Tennessee, I don't know, right-wing media, go down in flames and have Russian television, RTTV, be prosecuted for putting $10 million to buy right-wing podcasters to give positions on their shows adverse to American foreign policy and pro-Russia. So we just saw that. And then, of course, you've got the would-be assassin of Donald Trump being prosecuted, rightly so, for trying to kill a major presidential campaign candidate and being put into the courtroom of Aileen Cannon. So if this is weaponization by the Department of Justice, they're doing a terrible, terrible job. Get on it, Merrick. So I just wanted to kind of give that overview so people have that as talking points, because it is a major apparently campaign plank of Donald Trump. We've reached the end. Yes, we have. Sorry, of this episode of Legal AF. We do it twice a week. Wednesdays, I do it with Karen Friedman at Nifolo. Saturdays with my co-founder, good friend, Ben Meiselas. And then, of course, we all do hot takes right here on the Midas Touch Network all along the way. People ask Ben and me and Karen, how can we support the show? How can we support the Midas Touch Network? It's simple. And everything I'm going to tell you right now is basically free. Everything. It's just using your thumb or your finger. You can free subscribe to the Midas Touch Network as on their drive for 4 million. One day it's going to be drive for 5. Drive for 4 million. Having already crested and gone over the 3 million threshold. That's just a free subscription. And that continues this brand of independent journalism without outside investors helping us build a network together with our bare hands, without censorship, and with the type of content and shows that you've come to enjoy. And it supports the other things in our ecosystem, like that amazing newsroom, if you will, run by Ron Filipkowski on Midas Touch, the website. Now we have Midas Touch, the Substack, and all of that. Then we've got this new thing in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, which is Legal AF MTN on YouTube. It's a new channel, but same pro-democracy, same type of content that you've come to enjoy and love. I'll be curating it, sitting at that intersection of law and politics that you've come to enjoy. It'll be a lot of my takes on law and politics, and you can find out what 40 million people a month already know, that Legal AF is the home of law and politics commentary analysis like no other. And then we're bringing on other commentators, including the ones that you know and love from the Midas Touch Network, kind of be mashups and crossovers, and some new voices and faces that you haven't heard from yet, and a new show called Unprecedented that we'll be doing once a week with a rotating group of commentators along with me, starting with Dina Dahl, to talk about everything United States Supreme Court. That's Unprecedented. You can only get it on Legal AF MTN. Help us get to 200,000 subscribers, all free, before Halloween. That's my new drive. We got 100,000 in the first 10 days. Help us get to 200,000. Here's your opportunity to help build this channel in collaboration with MTN from the ground up. And then, of course, if you want to fly the flag of Midas Touch and Legal AF, we got a store. We got a store where you can go shopping for some great t-shirts and coffee mugs and some other things at store.midastouch.com. And you can go there and see the Legal AF material as well. I'm going to work with Jordy to kind of refresh the store for the fall and the winter, but it's a great opportunity there. And then we've got Patreon. Patreon.com/legalaf, where Ben and me, we hold town halls where you can actually ask direct questions. We'll give you a warning about it. And then we post some other content that's exclusive to Patreon, relatively inexpensive. The starting entry price per month is $10, cost of a cup and a half of coffee in most cities to get and support the show. Again, these are all ways within our ecosystem to support the show. So we've reached the end of another great episode. Ben, you might be wondering, where did Ben go? I didn't talk him off the screen. He just had to run off to do some things. As we all know, we're so happy that the Midas Touch Maternity Ward has been working overtime, starting with Jordy at the end of last year, my daughter in June, and now the arrival of Ben and Sochi's daughter just a few days ago. So until our next Legal AF, this is a shout out to the Midas Mighty and the Legal AFers.